able to get the results as fast as we do and get the results that everybody really is looking for. So when you take traditional dog training and you break it down to the nuts and bolts, the bare minimum of what it really is, you just have really two different approaches, right? So your first approach is what we call your motivational approach, right? Most people call it treat training, that type of stuff. But you have your dog, you ask your dog to do something, you then pay your dog for doing it. The upside of that type of dog training is your dog's going to be very, very happy, right? The downside of that type of training is all payment-based. And so when you're doing that type of training, if the pay does not outweigh the value of the distraction, you will never get your dog to listen to you 100%, because there's always going to be a distraction that outweighs the value of that treat. My taste buds change, and just because I love California fish grill doesn't mean I want to eat it every single day, every single time, every meal, right? So with the treats, you always have to change the treats up, right? So positive side of treat training, motivational approach, dog's going to be happy. Negative side, there's always going to be a distraction that outweighs the value of the treat. So you're never going to have that consistent obedience. The dog listens to you every time, no matter what. The other side of traditional dog training is more of your correction approach, but it's suppression avoidance. Normally you see choke chain prong collar. You can hear the little rattle can with the pennies or the rocks in the bottle, squirt bottles, newspaper. So at that type of training, you're actually not developing clarity in the dog, right? You're just suppressing the behavior that you don't want, and the dog just goes, okay, I'll just offer up a behavior so that the pain stops. So when you have that prong collar, that choke chain, that type of stuff, is your dog going to listen? Absolutely. But it's all based on being suppressed, right? Police dogs and stuff like that are trained that way. The only reason why it works for them, because they have dogs like this, high prey drive dogs, right? And so you can take this, I can take this dog, put a prong collar on him, rip his head off, and he'll still be like, okay, what next? Because that's just the dog's temperament. That's his attitude. Very, very high prey drive. So with that correction approach, a lot of times what you see is the dog is just offering up behaviors. Have you guys ever been somewhere and somebody tells them, sit, and the dog sits, and then lays down, and like rolls over, or you go to the dog park, come, and the dog comes whenever it wants? You guys ever seen that type of stuff before? That means the dog doesn't have clarity of what those commands are, right? And it doesn't have clarity and the ability to filter out distraction, and that's really what we need. All that stuff, you need to have a dog that is willing to pay attention to you, right? And when I mean attention, like this dog 24/7 is like looking at me like it's crazy, right? You don't have to have that, but it would be very similar if I just asked you a question. I expect some sort of acknowledgement, right? Or if you say, hey, can you grab that real quick, or something like that, there should be some sort of acknowledgement. I don't expect, my dog's not going to talk back to me, but if I say Olaf down, he should then lay down. If I tell him to sit, he should be paying attention enough to sit. So attention is one thing that we focus on. I want the dog paying attention to us. It doesn't matter where we're at, what we're doing, the dog needs to be paying attention. The second thing that we really focus on is clarity, right? How many people here speak dog? Nobody, right? I don't speak dog either. But the dogs also don't speak English. So we have to develop clarity, right? So the dog needs to understand the verbal, what it is that I'm asking the dog to do. The dog also needs to understand what the physical is of what that verbal means. If I tell him to come, he needs to understand, oh, come means run to him, or run to her, or run home, or run to wherever I'm asking the dog to do it. But if the dog doesn't understand what that means, I can tell him, watch this, Olaf, biscuit, backflip. Doesn't understand what those commands are, so he can't perform that task. Right? And so what we focus on, attention, clarity. Now we have the clarity part, we can use both of those to now condition the dog to filter out distraction. So when you have the dog that filters out distraction, I can now utilize the obedience that the dog has learned in a setting where there's high distraction. Now the dog still listens to me. Does that make sense?